Hey guys, hope all of you are doing fine. This is the part 12 of the Being Reborn in Marvel with Gamer's Ability. Marvel Gamer Part 12. Why was the virus here? This was supposed to be the MCU, right? I was supposed to be reborn within that very universe of movies I grew up watching, so why was Janet a zombie? I might not remember the movie where they rescued her, but I was sure as hell she wasn't a zombie when they did. I would certainly remember a Marvel movie with zombies. Was I actually within the zombie comic I had once read? No, that didn't make sense. The world around me, it's a constant reminder of the MCU, of that there was no doubt. So then, why? Why was this particularly terrifying threat breathing on my back? New quest created equals the virus that should not be. The quantum virus was not supposed to exist in this reality, it was only supposed to be in a few selected universes, so you have to find out why it's here, and who is behind it before it's too late. Objectives equals find a cure, find who the culprit is. Side objectives equals save Janet from the virus. The quest, when it appeared, I didn't pay it much attention, I didn't have the time. With Janet flying on her wasp suit towards the portal, all I could do was act quickly, and I did, closing the portal for the time being. But now I had the time. So the quest agrees with me, I muttered, not that this realization helped in any way. If anything, made this entire situation all the more troubling. Why? Well, the quest fucking implied there was someone behind this mess. Someone with enough power to put a fucking virus from another universe in this one, meaning that someone was well above my current pay grade, way fucking above. Especially considering that there were only a few selected individuals in the entire universe powerful enough to do multiversal things, like putting things from another universe into a different universe just for shits and giggles. Maybe it was time to check the power ranking. Whoever did this has to be in the top 30, I assume, considering not even Dormammu is capable of multiversal feats, which, considering he is a multidimensional being, it's saying a lot. Power ranking. Power ranking, current universe. 1. The one above all LV. 2. The Beyonder LV. New edition. 3. The Fulcrum LV. 4. The Living Tribunal LV. 5. The Heart of the Universe LV. 6. The Phoenix LV. 6. Oblivion LV. 7. Infinities LV. 8. Eternity LV. 9. Death LV. 10. Infinity LV. 11. The Protege LV. As I hovered over the rankings, something caught my attention. A new name, the Beyonder. The name somehow felt familiar, yet I couldn't put my finger on it. I really hoped he wasn't the culprit. I was in no form ready to fight him, or even talk to him, considering anything at the top can erase me like a bug, a tiny one at that. Objective completed. Find who the culprit is. Fuck me. Why would an almighty being want to fuck with me? I cursed, eventually realizing the stupidity of my question because it was highly likely the Beyonder wasn't even giving me a thought. He did what he did just because he could, not to annoy me, or to fuck with me. At least I hoped so. Because if he did it to bother me, to fuck with me, to anything with me, I was, fucked. Dealing with the likes of such power was well beyond my years and current power. The Beyonder POV. It had been a while since I found a universe, unlike the rest, a universe with a singularity, one of a kind of like me, but very weak though, at least for now, and that was no fun. I wanted to have fun, but I had to wait. After all, he was incomplete, everyone was. But he was more incomplete than the rest, and that puzzled me. It was funny really. I guess that was what I liked about humanity, that even though they were incomplete, the very core within them pushed them to grow, to evolve, to become better. The core of desire. Or maybe I should call it a disease. After all, it infected me. Before I venture outside my universe, I had no desires, no wants, no dreams, no fun. I had nothing but me, and I was enough. That was until I found what lay beyond the veil of my universe. The multiverse was so unlike what I was, that it shocked me, it changed me. I was understandably surprised to discover that most universes were populated by many beings that were merely a part of a greater whole making up their universe, each and every little one of them inherently incomplete and thereby trapped in a quest to remedy their individual incompleteness, pushing forward in the name of desire. The desire to be strong. The desire to be smart. The desire to better. An emotion I came to understand after seeing I was not all there was to see. Meaning, I was too incomplete in a way. But, this being, this anomaly that currently resided on Earth, he was more than incomplete, and that fascinated me to no end, because not even I was able to understand the limits of his possible growth. How fun was that? Granted, he needed a little push or two, to speed things up, and I was more than happy to provide a bit of help, if anything to kill the time. Sadly, I didn't have as much freedom on the subject as I would have liked. After all, that guy was keeping tabs on me like a hawk, protecting the anomaly, because he also finds fascinating. But, I was still able to push a straw or two, an atom or two, to make things more interesting. And who knows, maybe one day, he will reach the heights necessary to become more than he is. The cure for a disease that I didn't even understand. A being I couldn't even scratch. Things were not looking good for me. I need to avoid any world-ending scenario, I sighed, thinking of Hank, the man closest to reaching the quantum realm, and the only one that would and could represent a threat to us all, in the search for his wife. I knew what I had to do. It was not the best thing to do. But it was what it was needed. I needed to make sure Hank would never reach the quantum realm. I needed to bend his will so that he would never think of such a thing. I needed to do what I did to the king of Wakanda, but to him, but on a much greater scale, because in this case, I would not be influencing his thoughts like I did with T-Shaker. For this occasion, I would be taking his free will in terms of the quantum realm. I didn't like this choice. But, I didn't have to like it. This went beyond what I wanted, what he wanted, what everyone wanted. This was a matter of survival. I needed to ensure the survival of my daughters, and the survival of Earth as a whole. And if I needed to cross that very dangerous line of morality, I would. No questions asked. This was beyond what I wanted, or what I thought to be morally right within my spectrum of morality. This was what it had to be done. I had to take his free will. Because I knew, that no matter what, that no matter the risk, Hank would go for her, and doom us all in an act of selfish love. Sadly for him, he wasn't the only selfish man in this world, I was too. It's time, I sighed, opening a portal to Hank's house. It was time to cross that line I promised myself not to cross. It was time to break the boundaries of my self-imposed morality once again, this time, for good. Hank greeted me with a smile, as I entered his house, his daughter playing in the living room with some toys that looked new. As I walked, Hank started to talk about the possibilities behind the technology I had brought, about how much we could do with said technology. From his surface thoughts, I gathered why he was so excited. He felt he was close. He felt that with my help he would reunite with his daughter again. I flinched, hiding my discomfort with the thought, and my pity for the man. Maybe I didn't know what it was to love a woman like he loved his wife, but I knew the meaning of unconditional love, and I knew I would stop at nothing to save Emily or Nat. So I could in some level relate to his plight. But this was beyond that, wasn't it? Want a drink? Hank offered with a beaming smile. Yes, I nodded, with a tight-lipped smile, as I followed him to the kitchen. I bought some of the beers you like, Hank chuckled, opening his fridge, and grabbing a beer. Here you go. Thanks, I chuckled back, grabbing the beer from his hand. So what brings you here? Hank asked, grabbing another beer from his fridge, this one for himself. Nothing, just doing some damage control, I loosely elaborated. Oh, of what? Hank asked. Nothing you have to concern yourself with, not anymore. Oh, well, that sounds ominous, Hank chuckled, taking a sip of his beer. If only he knew. Thinking about it, I wonder how he will react in the future when I release him. I doubt he will forgive me, even if I return his wife to him, safe and sound. I doubt he will ever forgive me. No. Enough about that, Alex. This goes beyond such pathetic thoughts. You are not here to look for forgiveness, nor you need it. You are here to preserve that which you love. You are here to avoid losing everything you care about. Even if that means you have to break a man to do it. Remember what Hydra taught you. No remorse. No hesitation. No mercy. Good night, Hank, I smiled, as Hank gave me a perplexed look. It was, after all, noon. What do you mean? He froze, as my magic entered his head, inducing a heavy sleep on the man, giving me time to work on him. Daddy, I want some juice, Hope said, walking into the kitchen. Then seeing her dad, she asked with a concerned look on her face, what happened to Dad? He fell asleep, I lied. Don't worry, he will wake up soon, I reckon, I smiled at her, grabbing a juice box from the fridge, and giving it to her. Go ahead and play, I will put your dad on his bed. Hope, being the innocent child she was, smiled, and nodded, okay Mr. Walker. And with that said, disappeared back to the living to play with her toys. Hank, one day you will understand, I muttered, turning to look at Hank, putting multiple mental blocks around his mind, about anything related to the quantum realm, or saving Janet, forcing him to believe she was dead, that there was no salvation for her. Which in a way was true. For now at the very least. You did what you had to do, a familiar voice muttered behind me. I knew who it was. I had seen her on my minimap, the Ancient One. I know, I nodded. I came here to assist you, the Ancient One sighed. I have more experience in the magic tree you are using. Go ahead, I nodded, pointing at Hank. I already put all the magical barriers I could within his mind. Anything you do will be an improvement upon that. Very well, she nodded, walking towards Hank. What do you plan to do now? She asked after a few seconds of silence. Find a cure, I replied. The virus is a threat too big to ignore, so I will find a way to erase that threat. The problem is, I have no idea where to begin. The Ancient One sighed. I think I have one. Hank and his dream were crushed, by me. No more he would seek a way to search for his wife, because I had erased any thought of her being alive from his head. It was a lamentable decision. But one that had to be done. How are you feeling? The Ancient One asked, her tone soft in understanding. Good, I suppose, I sighed with a tired smile. You could say I'm having an internal debate, but nothing to worry about. Unlike the incident with Wakanda, I know for a fact this is for the best. War I can handle, but what was inside that realm? None of us are ready, not until I found a cure, at least, and that could take decades without a starting point. Great men are often faced with difficult decisions. The Ancient One nodded, her lips forming a thin line. You have faced many, each one more difficult than the last, and I know you doubt, you think this is wrong, that this is bad, but know that the sacrifices you make every day are ensuring billions get to live their lives without making these sort of decisions. I looked at her, and smiled in appreciation. I suppose someone has to make the difficult choices. She nodded, it's a thankless job. I snorted, you can be funny and inspirational when you want. I winked at her. I was young once, Mr. Walker, she replied, shooting me a playful look. So now what? I asked. Now, we focus on the matter at hand, finding a cure for that terrible disease, she sighed. Fortunately for us, I think I know where to start. Oh yeah, she had said she had an idea where to start a few hours ago. Well, don't keep me waiting. Well, this, the Ancient One chuckled, summoning to her left hand the time stone. With this you should be able to find something. What? I muttered, not really understanding what was happening. Alex, I trust you, more than I have trusted anyone in over 1,000 years, and that's a lot to say, considering you are relatively new in my life, she chuckled, levitating the time stone towards me with a wave of her hand, and it's because of that trust that I am giving you this. By this point the stone was in front of me, hovering in place. But, what about the next Sorcerer Supreme? I asked, looking at the stone. She smiled, there will be a day where I will need that stone, but that day is nowhere near, so until that day, do this old lady a favor, and keep that stone safe for me, will you? I grabbed the stone, and smiled at her, my eyes tearing up a bit, not out of sadness, but happiness I supposed. I really couldn't tell, but I knew it wasn't out of sadness. Thanks, I will keep it until then. Good, now, put that smile upside down, and let's get to work, she chuckled softly. We have a lot to do, and little time to do it. I looked at her and nodded. I have a question, I muttered with a sigh. Why now? The Ancient One looked at me for a moment, giving me a long scrutinizing look, as she mused what to respond, until eventually she said, nothing special really, beyond the fact you are the only other being in the universe I trust with the Infinity Stones. I just felt like it, I suppose, and yes, I'm aware that's not very like me. I'm not one to act in the spur of the moment, but I suppose you do bring the old me into the surface from time to time. I see, I chuckled. And, also, I did it because you are my only friend. Wait, what? I have allies, students, and many subordinates, but friends, I haven't had in a long time, not until you came, and it seems I have a soft spot for my friends, even to the point of breaking the rules, she smiled, beaming at me, so please do me a favor, every time you feel like you are alone, remember, I am here, and you can count on me, like I know I can count on you. You are really gonna make me cry, I smiled at her. Now that would be a sight, she replied with a laugh. Thor Odinson POV. My brother needed a weapon, for he in his mighty behavior still had none. So, his mighty brother would get him one worthy of being called the brother of Mjolnir. So, let's see if I understood. Eitri hummed, you want a pair of one-handed battle axes, imbued with your godly essence, for Alex, because they would match with Mjolnir, correct? I nodded. How hard was that to understand? Indeed, 2 one-handed battle axes with my godly essence. And you want them made from Uru? Eitri sighed. Of course. Anything else would be an insult. I nodded. 2 godly weapons, for a mortal? Eitri raised his eyebrows. A mortal, foolish Eitri, he is a god. I nodded. Of what? Eitri asked with a look I didn't understand. Of? I don't know, a human thing. Who cares, he's mighty enough to hold that title. Indeed he was my brother after all. Eitri sighed, but why two? You only use one. Well, in case one is on the cleaning service, of course. I laughed, besides I know my brother very well, and he's a dual wielder. Thor, he has never used a weapon before. How can you know that? Eitri sighed. I just know. I shrugged. Now can you do them, or not? Fine, I will. Eitri sighed. Yes. Soon my brother and I would be able to march into battle using mighty attacks charged with the unmatchable might of the thunder. I was getting giddy just thinking about it. Are you giggling? Eitri muttered. Me? Giggling? Never. I would die before admitting that, but if I did ever giggle, it would be a mighty giggle. I looked at the Ancient One, time stone floating neatly above my hand, and with a smile followed by a sigh, I asked, so, what do I do now? The Ancient One looked at me, summoning a hot cup of tea, as she sat on her desk. Use it, see into the past, then into the future. The stone should help you, in ways no one can. Well, I suppose it didn't hurt to look. Very well then, I chuckled, opening a portal to my house. See you later. Take care, Mr. Walker. The Ancient One smiled back, taking a sip of her steamy cup of tea. Back at my apartment, I took a seat on my sofa, thinking what to do, and how to tackle the problem, frowning at my whole situation, while looking at the stone the Ancient One had entrusted me with. A lost look. Maybe I needed a break. I just needed not to be thinking of, well, this. Hey, Bucky waved at me, getting my attention. What's that? He pointed at the time stone with his usually bored look. The key to controlling time, I replied with a smirk. Where was that when I wanted to sleep in on second grade? Bucky replied with a smirk of his own. I can relate to that, everyone can. I laughed. So, what's happening? Bucky asked, walking to the living room, taking a seat right in front of me. Nothing, I replied. Alex, I know you. Bucky snorted. I know when something is happening, and something is happening right now, so what is it? He really did knew me well, didn't he? I guess it was to be expected, considering he lives with me, and it's one of my closest friends. Well, I sighed, starting to explain to him the whole situation, from Hank, to the almighty being that could possibly be a threat. For the entirety of the conversation, Bucky just sat there, listening to me, until I finished. Zombies, huh? Bucky sighed. I read some books about that, but I reckon the zombies you are talking about are not the ones I have read about, right? No, I shook my head. Unlike in the books, these zombies keep their skills and knowledge, and well, you can imagine how an outbreak would result. In days the earth would be plagued. Bucky sighed once again. Yep, I nodded, clicking my tongue. And, to top that we have a god of some kind, as the responsible for the zombie virus, Bucky added. Yes, according to what I know, yes, he was the one to bring the quantum virus here. I nodded. That feels cheap, some way, Bucky muttered in deep thought. What do you mean? I asked, tilting my head to the side. Well, he's a god, like, a real one, right? Bucky asked, and I nodded. So, why the zombies? Maybe he's playing with me. I shrugged. No, that's not it. Bucky shook his head. Look, of all the things he could have done, he sent a threat you were prepared to seal away. He must know if he's as powerful as you say, how powerful you are, the limits of your reach, and yet, he picked an obstacle you were fully prepared to tackle. I blinked. He had a point. The Beyonder could, as I am now, blink me out of existence, and yet, he was playing whatever game he was playing very passively. Heck, if he wanted to fuck me, he could have sent the virus to Earth, instead of the almost unreachable quantum realm. I think he's testing you, or this attack wasn't directed at you at all, Bucky stated. That or, someone is keeping tabs on him. There's only one above him, and I doubt that guy would defend me, I replied. After all, what reason could the strongest being in the universe have to protect me, which leaves only the testing, and the not directed at me? I don't know, I really can't wrap my head around this whole situation, something just doesn't fit, and I can't tell what. Bucky sighed, slouching into the sofa with a groan. Life with you is never boring, isn't it? He added with a chuckle. I wish it was, I chuckled back. Thor Odinson POV. After one day of waiting, the 2 axes I had commissioned were ready. I barely could contain my grin, as I looked at the axes, embedded with my power. Soon Alex would be able to use my thunder, to vanquish his enemies, and I would be there alongside him, looking mighty. Mighty fine. Thor, are you ready? Sif asked. I nodded, putting the axes on a metal box as it was tradition for the warrior in question to brutally break the box to get his gift. Alex will love them, Sif smiled. I snorted, of course he would, it was gift from me. His brother, there was no other option but to love this present with every, what was the word, fiber of his body. I know, I nodded with a smug expression. I bought them, they costed me a fortune. Well, they are made entirely out of Uru, and your power, so I assume it took King Eitri more time than usual, Sif chuckled. Indeed, I nodded, with a grin. With gifts like that, I almost feel like you are trying to compete with me for his affection, Sif jested. Ha! Funny, I rolled my eyes at her, grabbing the metal box where the axes were with one hand. But in all seriousness, with gifts like that, mine will always look cheap, Sif chuckled. I rolled my eyes once again. You are his woman, sleep with him, and the Moran will be grinning for a week. Thor. Sif gasped, followed by a fit of laughter. What? It's true, we real men, are simply, give us food, sex, hair products, and weapons, and we'll be happy as we can be. I nodded, it was the honest truth. Hair products? Sif asked, her laughter dying into a chuckle. Yes, how else do you think my hair looks like it looks, silly Sif, ignorant in the mysteries of men. How the axes look. Knock. Mighty knock. Mighty knock knock. I blinked, opening my eyes, the sound of the door forcing my body to awake. Sighing, I stood up, and checked on my map, to find Thor and Sif to be the ones responsible for my sudden awakening. At least this time Thor had used the door, so that's progress. Brother! Thor shouted, kicking the door away so fast, the door went past me faster than a bullet, grazing my cheek. Forget my previous inner statement, Thor will never learn. Alex, Sif chuckled, waving at me, as Thor basically skipped towards me like a kid on drugs, and sight that made me shiver ever so lightly. So, what brings you two here? I asked, yawning, ignoring Thor as he looked at me like a puppy waiting to be praised for something. Well, I wanted to see my boyfriend, Sif winked, and Thor wanted to see his boyfriend. She chuckled at that, laughing at her own joke. Very well, I chuckled. Enough of your flirting, you will have time to enjoy later, for now. Here. Thor jumped in front of me, blocking my sight of Sif, basically shoving a big metal box on my face as he did so. What's that? I asked. Open it. Thor giggled. I chuckled, grabbing the metal box from Thor's hand, as the god of thunder himself took a few steps back in anticipation. And while I had no idea what was happening, both the faces of Sif and Thor were enough of a giveaway to let me know this was a gift of sorts. Let's see, I muttered, looking at the box. Pure metal, all around. Meaning, I had to break it. With that thought in mind, I covered my hands with mana empowering my physical might, and tore the metal box apart like one would do cracking an egg, letting its contents fall into the floor of my room. 2 one-handed axes. Nameless axes, legendary item. Material equals Uru. Elemental affinity equals thunder. Durability equals N/A. 2 axes crafted by no other than the King of Dwarfs, Eitri. Their power is unmeasurable, for they are as strong as their user. Plus 500% damage with thunder-related skills. Look at his face. Thor grinned, jumping up and down like a kid on a sugar rush. I knew this was the perfect gift. I blinked, moving my gaze to Thor's. This, just, wow. I know, I'm amazing, aren't I? Thor's laugh boomed across my room. As I tried to grasp how to express my gratitude, I was honestly at a loss for words as I looked at Thor, and the weapons. What's going on? Bucky said, walking to my room. Thor gifted Alex with 2 godly weapons, Sif replied, waving at him as he entered. Which means I win. Thor barked. You win what? Bucky raised his left eyebrow. The bro contest. Thor nodded, as if Bucky was supposed to know that. Bucky at this, looked at me, then at Thor, then back to me, then back to Thor. This continued for a few moments, until he simply turned around and said, "Okay, I'm out." In your face. Ha. Thor however took this as a victory of some kind. Thor, I have no words, I muttered, feeling the weapons in my hands. They felt powerful, they were also very light, more light than they had any right to be. It almost felt my hands were naked. If it wasn't for the electric feeling I was feeling by holding them, I would have assumed I was dreaming in a way. It would not be the first dream about weapons after all. Then don't say anything. Thor grinned, giving me a one-armed hug, using his other hand to point at my ceiling. All you have to do is fight me with them. What? I chuckled. Well, I got you the axes, I got dibs in your first fight with them. Thor nodded, as Sif shrugged in the back, like a mother saying just go with it. Sure, why not, I chuckled, it would also be their first win with me. Ha. As if. Thor laughed. Thanos the Mad Titan POV. The time for change was coming. The time for salvation. This universe needed me, I was the answer to the cosmic cry of agony that filled the universe. Or maybe, I was the only one strong enough to heed that call, to understand the sacrifices that had to be done, to ensure the survival of the universe as a whole, the only one willing to do everything, even the greatest sin, for the sake of the universe. My lord, one of my most loyal servants, Ebony Maw, kneeled before me. Any updates? I asked, holding in my right hand the first piece of 6-pieced puzzle to the universe salvation, the Mind Stone. None, my lord. Ebony shook his head. I feel I have failed you, and if you so feel like it, my life is yours to take, as always has been. I smiled. There was no need for that. He was a loyal servant, a loyal son, but above all, a capable soldier. No. I'm not worthy of your mercy, Ebony replied. Don't worry about this little setback. Time is what we have, I said, looking at the Mind Stone. Soon, the old king will die, and Earth will be unprotected. Right now, all we have to do is wait. After all, 3 of the stones are yet to be found. The Reality Stone, the Space Stone, and the Soul Stone. Without those 3, this universe won't have the release it so desperately needs. Sources say the Skrull were the last ones to see the Space Stone, but that's so far nothing but a rumor, but one we can confirm for you, my lord. Ebony smiled. Do that, I nodded, but leave the 9 realms out of your search. The last thing we want is the old king going after us. I was confident I would succeed, one day or another, but one thing was having confidence, and another was being a blind fool. The old king was powerful, more powerful than any other being in this universe. I had seen his power in person, and I knew I was still not a match for him, but I also knew his days were numbered. And until his day came, I had no other choice but to wait. As you wish, Ebony nodded, before leaving the room. 2 Aru weapons, a gift from Thor. I smiled at the thought I had somehow befriended the god of thunder so much. He had done this out of the goodness of his heart. I also smiled at the fact Thor had basically picked the weapon I would use for me. I mean, before this I had no idea what weapon I wanted, which was why I hadn't forged a weapon, because I wasn't sure what I wanted. A whip. A sword. A gun. I didn't know. Now, I knew. Seeing the axes had been an epiphany of sorts. The moment I laid my eyes on them, it felt right. It was love at first sight, kind of poetic if you think about it. Now, all that was left to do was name them. After all, no weapon was complete until it had a name, at least, according to Thor, that is. Which wasn't particularly my strongest area. I sadly sucked at naming things. Name them so that we can fight. Thor, who was still waiting for his match, demanded in a childlike manner. And I told your Nordic ass, this would take time. I shot back with a playful glare. That will come naturally, Sif reassured, patting me in the back, but please be more creative. That Thor, Mjolnir literally means hammer of Thor. And isn't it my hammer? Thor asked, with a shit-eating grin on his face. Yes, but Sif started, but Thor stopped her. Then by all accounts the name is accurate. So thank you very much. Thor nodded with a smile. Don't worry, I'll get creative, at least I hoped so. In the meantime, fight me. Thor jumped once again. Fine. I chuckled. 3 hours later, Thor laid on the ground on his back, as I stood above him with a blood-covered smile. Once again, I had won, making this my second victory over him. I feel I made my goal to surpass you once again even harder. Thor chuckled, a bit of blood dripping out of the corners of his mouth as he looked at my weapons. I chuckled. The injuries I had sustained during our battle already healed for the most part. God, I loved my regeneration. Indeed you did, brother. That only makes this more exciting. Thor laughed. I never thought I would say this, but it feels good to lose. It feels even better to win. I grinned. Listen here, you little shit, Thor chuckled, pushing his body up with some effort. You know what I mean. I nodded, raising my hands in surrender. I know. So, tell me, brother, why are you worried? Thor asked, as I blinked in surprise. I'm not. I was, but I didn't think Thor of all people would notice. I know you, so speak, before I beat the truth out of you, Thor threatened with a smile. You do know you lost, right? To me. I chuckled. Ha. The human has some bark. Thor laughed. I have my moments, I laughed. Talk to your brother from another mother, let me help you, Thor sighed. Thor, how strong do you think we are? I asked. Plenty. Thor replied with a confused tone. By human standards maybe, I chuckled with a sigh, but in the big scheme of things, we are weak, sickeningly so. There are beings out there that could crush us with but a thought, and those beings are dangerous, beings that would see no difference between a human and your father. Thor looked at me, and muttered, what? Yeah, I nodded. Are we truly that weak? Thor asked. Yes, I sighed. How fun. Thor laughed. In the meantime I was like, what? How fun. I asked in a shocked tone. Yes. That means there are heights we have yet to reach, power we have yet to tap into. And we'll do it together. Thor declared with a wild grin. Together? I asked. Of course, you really thought I was going to let you have all the fun. By Odin's beard, that won't happen. If those beings represent a threat to you, then they represent a threat to me. Thor laughed. I looked at him for a brief moment, processing everything, before I started laughing uncontrollably. You truly are the best, Thor. I know, so don't worry, we will climb this ladder together. Thor smiled, and I'll be honest, I believed him. After Thor left, I was left alone with Sif, so I rented a movie, deciding it was high time to have some quality time with my girl. Worrying about what could happen right now was pointless. Besides, the thought of Thor and Bucky backing me up in this situation felt nice. Perhaps I needed to help them to help me. I did have the resources and powers to help them become stronger, and right now I needed all the allies I could get. Perhaps even help Sif. I wonder if I can do dungeons with them. And if said dungeons would even do something for them. But enough about that, I would test that later. Right now, I had a beautiful Asgardian in my arms, and that was all that mattered. Odin Borson POV. A new vision. Portraying Thor as an entirely different king, one more powerful than any other king before him, Alex standing by his side. The two of them fighting a being of all black, whose sole purpose is destroying everything in creation. In all honesty, I didn't know what to think of the situation. Or who that being they were fighting was, though I had an inkling who it was. Null, the king in black. I laughed. Alex sure had changed stuff. His mere presence had changed the game I had been playing for over a millennia, and to be honest, I had no idea if this change was for the best, or for the worse. But I was already in for the ride. It was too late to avoid anything. I woke the following day with Sif in my arms, sleeping soundly. Already the beginning of a good day, I thought as I smiled at the sight. With a yawn, I stretched my arms, being careful not to wake Sif up, as I stood up from the bed without a sound. Giving her one last look, I moved to the bathroom and started my morning routine, which included brushing my teeth. After that, I moved to the kitchen, closing the door of my room, being mindful of not making a sound. At the kitchen, I found Bucky making breakfast, with Nat and Emily eagerly waiting for the meals at the kitchen dining table. "Daddy!" Emily, like always, was the first one to greet me, jumping out of her seat, tackling me into a tight hug. I patted her head, smiling at her. "Good morning, princess." "No hugs for me." Nat chuckled, walking towards me. "I might get jealous, Dad." "No need, I have enough love for the both of you," I winked, pulling her into a hug. "So, you had fun?" Bucky asked, drawing my attention to him. "I did," I nodded. Bucky snorted, turning to look at me. "You better hire more helpers, my hands are full with two," he mouthed silently. Which made Nat giggle, as she was the only one besides me that understood what Bucky had said. "Is Sif gonna eat with us?" Emily asked, tilting her head to the side. "I'm not sure, she's sleeping for the moment, and I won't wake her up," I replied, breaking the hug so that we could move to the table. "I bet she's tired," Bucky snickered. "Bucky, shut up," I rolled my eyes at him. No, please go on," Nat laughed. "What's going on?" Emily muttered to me. "Nothing, baby, Bucky and Nat are being dumb, that's all," I replied. "Where's Thor, by the way?" Nat asked, her laughter finally dying. "Somewhere," I replied, unsure about it. I knew he was on Earth, but where exactly, no idea. I mean, he had said he was going to stay for a bit to train with me. Curious, I opened my map and checked, to find the God of Thunder sleeping in my garage. Why though? I have like 6 extra rooms. He's on the garage, for some reason I added, which made Bucky chuckle, in a rather evil way. At this, I narrowed my eyes, and asked, "What did you do?" I told him there were no rooms available. Bucky replied, without even trying to hide it. Really, Bucky? I sighed. What? He makes it so easy. It's not my fault. He has the IQ of a room temperature. Bucky shrugged. It is because he said he's the mightiest uncle/brother. I asked with a chuckle. Maybe, who knows? Bucky once again shrugged, as he continued to cook. I'll go and wake him up, Emily announced, running to the garage before I could even reply. So, besides the possible little bro or sis in the oven, and Uncle B being jealous of Thor, what else do we have this morning? Nat asked, making me choke on the coffee I had summoned a few moments ago. Nat, there's no baby in the oven. While I wasn't against the idea of having more kids, right now was not the time. Cool, but when you decide to start baking, please do try to make a little bro. There's enough estrogen in this family as it is. Nat winked, pointing at Bucky. I laughed. I felt that Bucky snorted. So, you want a little brother? I asked, as my laughter died down. Nat nodded, giving me a beaming smile. I mean, I would not be against the idea of a little sister. I already have 2, but having a little bro would be nice. I could teach him how to bully the bullies, and maybe even help him. She grinned. I'll see what I can do when the time comes. I chuckled. You bastard! Oh, there's a child in here. You meanie! Thor shouted, coming into the kitchen with Emily by his side. How was the floor? Bucky asked, calmly. I will have my revenge. Thor roared. Keep it down, Sif is sleeping. I sighed. Oh, and just like that, Thor had forgotten he was angry at Bucky because he moved to my side in a flash. So, Thor, sit down, before I slap you. I rolled my eyes. Fine, I can always ask Sif. Thor sighed, taking a seat. After our breakfast, I decided to test how my powers worked, in terms of inviting people to my dungeon adventures. I mean, considering raids were impossible to complete alone, this was a good time as any to try that part of my power. Thor, are you ready? I asked. For what? You opened a portal to the middle of nowhere, and never said what in the beard of my father we were going to do. Thor replied, giving me a confused look before he suddenly beamed at me. I see. You want to fight again, then bring it on. Let's us clash once again in honorable combat. Before Thor could throw his hammer, I shook my head. No, we are not here to train, that way at least. Then how? Thor inquired, lowering his hammer, his mood down. Well, I sighed. Here goes nothing. Invite Thor to party. You want to party? Thor muttered, looking around. Here. In the desert. It worked. I mean. Oh, I see, you wish to do a battle royale. Huzzah. T'is indeed the best place to fight a battle like that, so, of course, I want to party. Thor nodded. And just like that, he was at my party. Party system equals a party, a type of group, is a collection of beings that can communicate amongst each other privately, mentally or via chat, share XP, and manage the distribution of loot from any mobs party members kill. Plus 25% EXP buff. Only the gamer can edit and modify stats and use any game-related skills. As for the stats, other party members earn through level up, those points automatically allocated to the stats they have the highest accordingly. Party members get only level stats, meaning the points that are naturally increased by them. This system just offers them a higher input of monsters for them to slay, and increase their strength. The main beneficiary is the gamer. Can you hear me? I thought. Of course, I can, silly, I'm right beside you. Thor laughed. Well, the party worked all right, but Thor was still Thor. The next following hours, I did a lot of dungeons with Thor, to test things out. Beyond having extra help, the dungeons didn't change much, with the exception of the EXP buff, and the monsters being generally tougher to compensate for the extra member. As for Thor, well, to say he was elated was coming short. Thor was ecstatic. Once he understood what we were doing, his eyes shone like a kid on Christmas Eve. For him, having the power to create monsters to fight, was indubitably, his words not mine, the best thing ever. He was so excited, my testing was extended from 1 dungeon to 22. I sighed at that because apparently in this timeline it was me who had turned Thor into a gamer. That was amazing. No wonder you keep growing stronger, all you do is fight. Not really, the golems level up for me now, I mostly just do stupidly dangerous quests, and they happen to give me levels, or time-walking dungeons, but those are on a ban for now. Thor, remember our deal, you get to do dungeons with me, but you don't say a word to anyone, is that clear? I repeated, for like the 100th time, just to be sure. Worry not, little brother, I shan't say a word, not even to the All-Father. Thor declared. Little brother. Was I just demoted? I mean, I'm taller than you, so yeah, Thor nodded. Never mind, Thor is being Thor. So, tomorrow, same time? Thor asked, his eyes beaming at the prospect. Sure, why not? I chuckled. I might as well use his eagerness to earn me some EXP, while he farms his. The Beyonder POV. How fun! He was improving, becoming more complete, less empty. At this pace, it would only take a few thousand years for him to reach the realm of the impossible, by ignorant standards that is, and I was excited. Because then, when he reached the realm I belonged to, the annoying being above all would stop protecting him. Then, I would be allowed to have fun, to see if he would help fill the void within me, the void all creatures have, including the one above all. Thankfully, a few thousand years were nothing for me, time was irrelevant when you lived outside time and space. I can wait to see how he develops, I chuckled. But maybe, just maybe, I could push things a bit. If the one above all is so fond of this reality, and him, because they are both unique, then, I will simply experiment with him, in another reality, all I have to do is not kill him. But what world, I hummed, so many universes, so many realities, which one would push him to become what I needed, which one would push the boundaries of his desire beyond comprehension? Maybe the zombie one. It had its merit, and with his power, it would certainly be a challenge to survive there, granting him more power. Beyond a great, the party pooper, it's here. 1. How you doing? I smiled, without even looking. I told you to leave this reality alone. One side. But 1, how can I? Everything here breaks the mold. Everything here, it's extraordinary, and its uniqueness could be the key to filling the emptiness within us. The key to finding the missing piece that makes every living being incomplete, I replied, excited. Nevertheless, I wish to preserve this anomaly intact. One replied, his tone as soft and warm as ever. He really sickened me, so much power, and he was the biggest pansy in the universe. So much for the strongest being in all of creation, so much for the maker. What's the point of life if we don't push it? I scoffed, rolling my eyes. Life is supposed to grow when it needs to grow, we can't push it, It has to come naturally, one chuckled. Is that why you sent that girl there? I sighed, thinking of that mess that called herself a copy of the anomaly. At best she was an abomination. I did it because she was in need of saving, nothing more, nothing less, one replied, though I suppose that's a lie, partially at least, because, in a way, I mostly saved her, because her world was a mistake I made, a mistake trying to replicate him, a singularity, that in my own hubris I thought I could replicate him, and bless all in creation with his many gifts, never occurring to me that he was perhaps like me, one and only. He is like us then. I chuckled, I imagined as much, though he's painfully weak. Give him time, one chuckled, no, everyone is born into power. I suppose so, I sighed. Now, leave him be, one added, before going back to his own realm. He was annoying at times. Before Alex he wasn't so hands-on, and that annoyed me. But for now, I would comply. Sooner or later, one would slip, and I would push Alex to grow so that he could show me the highs of his desire, his lust for growth, and strength. POV. So many powerful eyes on that single man, poor guy. I truly felt sorry for him, for it was truly best to be ignored in this cruel universe. Attention was never something good, it was always something bad. But one can't avoid the eyes of the top when climbing that mountain. I wonder how far things will play, I mused. You are giving him too much thought, the annoyed voice of my companion was heard. Because he honestly deserves such, I chuckled, and besides, he's not a mortal, I frowned. He was the farthest thing for a mortal. If he was immortal, as many wanted to believe, the outer so-called gods would have jumped at the opportunity to devour him. After all, he was a unique dish, and those disgusting eyesores loved that, a one-of-a-kind plate, but they had not acted, because they were terrified, and for a good reason. After all, why would a roach try to attack their clear superior? It was almost fun, seeing how beings infinitely more powerful than him, feared him, and stayed out of his way, out of fear of awakening something we have no idea if it can be awakened. I suppose my companion sighed, I wonder why he limits himself, thought. The mind is a mysterious thing, I replied, for the mind was our greatest enemy. As I had promised, the very next day, I started doing dungeons with Thor once again. The little EXP bonus he was giving me proving to be quite useful because I was about to level up. What is it again that we have to do? Thor asked, bashing an orc's head violently with his hammer, bloody bits of the orc splattering everywhere, leaving nothing but a headless orc. We have to clear this area of monsters so that the doors for the next area open, I replied with a smile, amused with his childish behavior. I see, Thor grinned, then I shall offer these fake monsters no mercy. Like he had offered them any before, I thought. We should bring Sif here, I mused out loud. We definitely should, otherwise she will hang you by the balls, Thor cackled, as I frowned at the thought, wondering why would Sif hang me by the balls? Why would she do that? I asked, blasting a few orcs away with a spell. Well, she loves fighting as much as I do, but she doesn't like to fight if there can be consequences. This place is the answer to that. I mean, look at me, I have killed 2,000 orcs, and there's no threat of war above my head. This is therapeutic. Thor laughed, killing a few orcs as he did so, by slamming his hammer to the ground, electrocuting the orcs around with his godly domain. I see, I nodded. It made sense. Sif was always ready to fight, and she enjoyed it. The dungeons would be like a spa day for her. Not Bucky though, he would not like this. Thor shook his head in a childish manner. As I rolled my eyes, they really acted like two little brothers fighting for my attention. I snorted. Well, I was planning on inviting him, and the Ancient One, I chuckled, and now Sif. That makes a party of 5. The bald one. Thor hummed while choking an orc with his own arm, while his NPC companions watched in horror. Yes, I sighed. She likes to fight. I always assumed she was more along the lines of, do your homework, Thor, clean your room, Thor, you know, stuff like that. Thor chuckled, finally killing the orc. She is at times, I admitted. I knew it. Thor chuckled once again, as the doors to the next zone opened. After all, there were no more monsters around, we had simply killed them all while talking. Let's go, I said, walking towards the next zone, with Thor close behind me. Odin Borson POV. In my office, I watched as Thor and Alex popped in and out of reality, doing Bor knows what. Not that it surprised me, of course. I mean, I already knew Alex did this kind of thing before, it simply shocked me Thor had joined him, or was it the fact that Alex had invited him that shocked me? I really couldn't tell. What actually surprised me though, was, that every so often, I would feel Thor's energy grow, meaning that whatever they were doing, was helping them get stronger at a really shocking pace. In fact, Thor was seeing more progress in these 2 days than he had seen in the last few decades. Alex, the walking mystery, I chuckled, as a portal opened in the middle of my office, with Yao, as usual, being the one to step through it. Hello, old friend, Yao waved at me. Yao, I greeted her, offering her a seat. So, what are you doing? Yao asked with a knowing smile. Bor, this woman was infuriating. You already know, stop wasting my time with stupid questions. I barked without a bite. There's no need to get angry, Yao chuckled, trying to placate me. I was simply curious as to why you were spying on Alex. Bor's balls, this woman acted like his mother. Technically, I was spying on my son, I replied with a smug smile. I suppose that's a valid answer, Yao rolled her eyes. He's getting stronger, I sighed, they both are. Indeed, Yao nodded, taking a seat before she turned to look at me. How does it feel to know you will retire in a few months? She asked, changing the topic of the conversation. I don't know, I admitted, knowing that because of the ripples Alex created, I would give my son the force of Asgard, had not prepared me for it, especially considering the reason why I would have to give my son that kind of power. Otherwise, his attempts to help Alex would prove to be pointless in the face of such an enemy. The Odin Force, right? That's how you call it if I remember correctly, Yao added with a smile. Yes, I nodded with a chuckle, pushing my thoughts into a corner, though my father used to call it the essence of Asgard, or the spiritual crown of a king. They will win, you know that, Yao muttered, reading between the lines. We don't know that. Our knowledge of the future stopped being accurate the moment Alex came to the equation, I barked. All we know is that they will fight Null, and that's it. Nothing more. I know, but instead of doubting them, I chose to believe in them, Yao sighed. An admirable thing, I scoffed, to trust in children to save us. By all means then, kill Null by yourself, Yao smiled, as I growled at her. You know very well Null is beyond my reach, I begrudgingly admitted. Which is why we need to trust in them. After all, you and I know, Thor is to be the strongest king in all of Asgard's history, counting the kings that have yet to be born, and those that already passed, Yao smiled. I know, and Alex is, well, whatever he is, I chuckled. I myself don't know what he is, Yao chuckled back. A pain in the ass, that's what I laughed. Now, that's just mean, Yao shook her head with a smile, but not inaccurate, she added with a smirk. I think I will buy a house close to the beach after retiring, I mused. I haven't been on Earth in quite a while, I chuckled. 1,000 years, Yao replied, you haven't touched Earth in 1,000 years. With Thor now basically living on Earth, my leveling speed had increased considerably. Because not only the golems were constantly doing dungeons, but so was I, and Thor. Heck, at the pace we were both going we would reach the 300s in a week. Never had I ever level up so fast, or had so much fun doing it. Heck, before today doing dungeons was a chore, something I had to do for the sake of becoming stronger, but nothing more. They brought me no joy, no fun, nothing but the EXP I required to continue growing. It was unbearably boring. Now, it was fun. It felt like I was playing a game with my best friend, a game that I liked. It kinda reminded me of my time playing WoW or Final Fantasy before all of this began. The point was, I was having fun, and the thing I once considered a chore was now something I looked up to. It's funny really how one person can change things for the better without even trying. As of now, my level was 291, while Thor's was 293. Which wasn't so big of a difference, considering he was a few levels above me before we started doing this a month ago. I grinned. Even with all the threats looming above our heads, I was having fun, I was enjoying what I was doing. Nonetheless, I couldn't lower my guard, because even though I was leveling up quite quickly, I was still far away from being able to deal with some of the problems I had ahead of me. Which brought me to the following point. I needed more help. Thor alone would not suffice, I needed a team of my own, filled with people I could trust with my life if the necessity came to be. People like Thor. Or Bucky, or the Ancient One, or Sif. They were the only ones I trusted, the only ones I could rely on, and yes, while Fury was my friend, to an extent I couldn't fully trust him. Of course, I had other friends, like Magneto, but our friendship was akin to that of good neighbors. I didn't fully trust him, at least not enough to share my baggage. The point being, I needed to form my own team, and I needed to form it now. In a way, the Avengers needed to be born before their time. The Beyonder POV. Soon I would get my chance to act, soon the one above all would be occupied dealing with some internal affairs, in more ways than one, leaving me to do as I pleased. Meaning it was time to test Alex, and the limits of his desire. It was time to push him into the path of completion. I could hardly wait. Now the question was, what kind of test would get the best result for him? What kind of test would push him to the limits of his desire? Questions even I had no answers for, yet. I grinned as an idea came to my mind, an idea so simple, yet so full of potential I couldn't help but laugh. A battle. A tournament. All for the sake of the pebble called Earth he loves so much. That would push the limits of his desire beyond anything. Of course, it would be hardly fair if I was to fight him, as of the moment he and his companions were nothing but ants compared to me, and I'm using ants as an adjective very generously. The point being, fighting me would prove nothing, it would change nothing, no amount of desire would push him to a level that reached me, at least not now, maybe in a few millennia, but not now. Meaning I had to get creative. Time to get creative, I laughed, already knowing what I would spend my time on as I waited for the one above all to go away. I would spend this valuable time, creating the challenges that would face Alex, and his friends, testing each and every single one of them and the limits of their desires. Alex Walker POV. Back in my house, I waited for Buckley to arrive in my living room, while Thor slept in the room I had given him like a cat on a nap. As I waited, I couldn't help but wonder how would Bucky react to the invitation I had for him, or that Thor had been invited first. Alex finally he arrived. Bucky, I waved at him. Bucky, reading my face, walked to the living room and took a seat, worry taking over his normally unexpressive face. Did something happen? Bucky asked, worry lacing his voice. No, I shook my head. Nothing had happened, at least for now, but I have a proposition for you. Bucky raised an eyebrow, worry leaving his face, as interest took over. What? He inquired. Well, how would you like to be stronger? I asked, not really sure how to start this conversation. Stronger? What do you mean? Bucky asked, looking at me funny. Exactly what that means, stronger, I replied with a sigh. See, I can create places to train, so to speak, places that boost your natural strength as you go, I tried to elaborate. That explains a lot, Bucky snorted, rolling his eyes. Not so long ago, I was stronger than you. Now you could use me as a towel. That's a creative analogy, but yes, I nodded with a chuckle. So, how would this work? Bucky asked. Well, you would come with me and Thor, and kill monsters, I replied. I see, I take it you picked Thor first to test if you could help others become stronger, right? Bucky replied, surprising the heck out of me. I had, after all, not expected that conclusion from him. Not entirely, I chuckled, scratching my head sheepishly. I picked Thor because he's the only one close to me in terms of power, so it was a safe bet to pick him. Bucky nodded. It makes sense. So, are you in? I asked. Of course, Bucky grinned. You really think I would leave you alone with Thor? You need someone with a brain working with you, and fortunately for you, I can compensate for Thor. I heard that. Thor barked from his room. I wanted you to. Bucky barked back. After inviting Bucky to our leveling group, I moved to invite the next person on the list, the Ancient One. The woman that had filled many roles in my life. She had been a teacher, a counselor, a friend, and above all, a trusted ally. I needed her, in more ways than one. Without me even noticing, she had become an irreplaceable part of my life. So here I was, knocking outside her office door, waiting for her to answer. Alex, the Ancient One, greeted me, opening the door with a wave of her hand. Hi, I smiled at her, walking into her office. So, what brings you here today? The Ancient One asked as I took a seat. Well, I'll go to the point, I sighed. Do you want to become stronger? I'm in. The Ancient One nodded. As I stood there like the Pikachu meme, looking at her. Alex, I have noticed the growth within you, within Thor, she smiled, and it flatters me you have decided to offer me what you have offered your brother. I laughed. Well, that was fast, I sighed with a smile. Well, the older you get, the less time you like to waste. Besides, why would I even need to think of such an offer? The Ancient One chuckled. I mean, you don't really know what I'm offering. For all she knew, I could have been offering something dark, and yet she accepted right away. Mr. Walker, I know you, I trust you. Isn't the time stone in your hands enough proof of that? She replied. I guess I'm lucky then, I smiled at her. Indeed you are, the Ancient One shot back with a playful wink. With Bucky and the Ancient One already on board, it was time to invite the last member of my leveling group, Sif, my girlfriend. So, eager to recruit her, I opened a portal to Asgard to where she currently was, the training grounds. Alex. Sif waved at me, being the first one to notice the portal opening in the middle of the training ground. Sif, I waved back, as Sif trotted towards me, leaving the rest of the Asgardians around to train without her. What brings you here? Sif asked, jumping into my arms. Well, first, this, I replied, giving her a kiss. Now with that out of the way, we can talk. Or kiss more, Sif winked. That for later. For right now, I have a proposition for you, I smiled, giving her another kiss, just because. Sif smiled, what proposition, dear boyfriend? Well, how would you like to become stronger? I replied. Well, seeing how I train every day, I suppose very much. Sif chuckled. Well, what I'm offering you is something far more effective than traditional training. I nodded. Sif paused, giving me a long look, before she asked, what? Can't really explain, but long story short, you'll get more results in a month than a year out here, I replied. That sounds like a scam, but seeing as the proposition it's coming from you, and how strong you currently are, well, I have no other choice but to believe you. Sif replied, looking at the training grounds. Thor is doing what you're offering me, right? Yes, I nodded. Well then, Sif smiled, giving me a long aggressive kiss. I'm in, she added, breaking the kiss for a moment before she started kissing me once again. 3 hours later, where Sif and I trained, other things, I was ready to go back to Earth with her. First, of course, I had to clear her with Odin, who gave her permission to stay on Earth for as long as she needed, clearing her of any responsibilities on Asgard, for the moment. After clearing her with Odin, well, I opened a portal to my house, where the rest of the team was waiting to start. Sif. Thor barked with a grin, I'm so glad you're here. Same, Sif smiled. A group of 5, the Ancient One commented, it's been a while since. I'm not the oldest person in the room. I chuckled, remembering that Thor and Sif were indeed older than her. Thor is a toddler at best, Bucky snorted. Hey! Thor shot back in indignation, as he whispered to Sif a question, what's a toddler? Thor, how can you? Never mind, Sif sighed in exasperation. Anyway, are you all ready? I asked. Yes, the Ancient One nodded. Always, Bucky nodded with a grin, cocking his gun. You already know, brother. Thor beamed. What the big oaf, said Sif chuckled. Alrighty then, let's kick some ass. I chuckled, opening a portal to where the dungeon I had in mind to do was. POV. Things were about to get heavy for Alex. The Beyonder was like a child. Once he was fixated in something, in someone, your only hope to survive, to pass his stupid tests, and hope something else gets his attention. Nonetheless, the Beyonder had picked a curious individual to be the target of his attention, someone with untold power within them. I was almost tempted to say, the Beyonder was playing with things he didn't understand, all in the stupid hope of finding something to complete him. Who knows, if the multiverse happens to be on luck, Alex might just be the one ending that spoiled brat once and for all. Will we help Alex? My companion asked. I shook my head. A battle between the Beyonder and me would only result in the end of this universe. Besides, right now, he's not acting, not directly, he wishes to push Alex, meaning I have no reason to intervene. Besides, I wasn't sure I could even kill the Beyonder. Perhaps this little test from the Beyonder will finally break the limiters Alex has put on himself, my companion sighed. Hardly. I shook my head, but it will push him towards that direction, which is exactly what the Beyonder wants. I will never understand you almighty beings, my companion sighed. If anything, Alex would be a threat, and yet, all of you want to see him grow. The top is lonely, I chuckled, and a challenge is always welcomed. If you want to read up to 20 chapters ahead, go to https://www.patreon.com/cornbringer. Now with audio chaps. Starting in chap 170, for those with bad sight. Discord invite, https://discord.gg/xjobs. The Beyonder POV. 3 months later. Finally, after 3 Earth months of wait, the one above all was focused on something else, fighting the inner struggle of his alter ego one below all. Meaning, I was free to do as I pleased. Free to set the stage for the games that were about to unfold. The Beyonder games. I already had everything I needed. The freedom to act, and my champions. Created by my own power. Reinhard. Solomon. The Spartan. Dorothy. And, their leader, Morpheus. My champions, against Alex and his team. This will be so fun. I grinned. Now all that was left to do, was creating the stage, the grand terrain where this battle, this test, this tournament would be played. Easy enough. With the one above all otherwise occupied with his inner yearly fight, well, I was free to do as I pleased. Meaning that setting the stage, was but a simple task. I would create a world, a dimension for this event. Time to start the games. I laughed, wondering if Alex and his team would pass this test, or perish trying. The possibilities were endless. Alex Walker POV. The moment I invited Sif, Bucky, and the Ancient One to my party, I discovered something. Each person gave the entire group a 25% EXP boost. Needless to say, at the time, I was elated to see this. From an extra 25% of EXP to 100%, it was a big jump. Especially considering the boost, boosted all EXP, including the one the golems were farming for me. With that thought in mind, I decided to leave the party forever on, after modifying some settings, to avoid party members annoying each other. Anyway. Since then, I had leveled up quite a few times. Nearing the gap between me, and the most immediate threat, Thanos, more and more. Heck, if things continued like they were going, with my leveling group and I, doing daily dungeons and such, I was sure to reach Thanos' level in less than a year. Of course, for that to happen, I had first to level up my other companions. Because while it was true I was leveling up quite fast, well, I was doing lower level dungeons, because Sif and Bucky limited the options we had. But I was certain that in no time, I would help them close that gap, opening more challenging dungeons. Party. Alex Walker, LV 321. Thor Odinson, LV 318. The Ancient One, LV 251. Sif, LV 189. Bucky, LV 177. Maybe doing some low-level raids would provide more EXP, and help them close that gap. Brother. Thor called, snapping me out of my long reverie. Yes. I asked, turning to look at him, wondering what he wanted. I'm ready to kill more monsters. Thor grinned, of course, he wanted that, he had a one-track mind. I'm down, Bucky said, walking into my room. Like Thor said, killing monsters is therapeutic. All right, I nodded. Let me talk with Sif and the Ancient One first. Huzzah! Thor grinned, skipping out of my room like a little girl on the flower camp. Was that perturbing, or was it just me? Bucky muttered. It was. I nodded. Good. Bucky nodded. After lunch, I used the party communication system to inform the Ancient One of our plans, to which she agreed immediately. These last months, I had come to learn, the Ancient One had a rather adventurous spirit, that mixed with her scholar-like attitude. She was fascinated with my power, and how it created pocket dimensions, stable ones, so much, that she never missed a dungeon, ever. So, more monsters to kill? Sif asked with a battle-thirsty grin. Stronger ones, I nodded. We are doing a low-level raid, which is like a dungeon, but one that went to the gym and got jacked. Seeing that rather simplistic analogy, I think it's safe to assume this raid you speak of is considerably more difficult than the ones we have been doing so far, the Ancient One added. By a lot, I nodded. Dungeons are made for one person, raids require groups. I sighed at my elaboration. I see, the Ancient One mused with a smile. I can't wait to see how this dimension differs from the rest we have seen so far. And you were keeping those hidden? Brother, how could you? Thor gasped. There was a challenge in front of us. And you didn't tell me. The nerve. I first wanted to increase our overall strength as a team. I rolled my eyes at him. In other words, the rest of us would have died if we tried one, right? Bucky sighed, catching on. Yes, beyond me, Thor and the Ancient One. I was not sure the rest was ready for a raid. I nodded. Raids have mechanics, and other things, that require each member to be able to survive on its own. Dungeons are more linear, you kill monsters, and proceed. Here it's different. Are we ready now? Sif asked, looking around. Yes, I nodded. I had, after all, picked a raid that benefited Sif and Bucky most of all. Then let's us embark on this brotherly journey, Thor declared, grinning from cheek to cheek. Brotherly? The Ancient One muttered, raising an eyebrow. Thor, there are 2 females in the group, Sif sighed, rolling her eyes. And brotherhood goes beyond gender, Thor replied with an impossibly large smile. Please, let's just go do the raid, before I get an aneurysm out of sheer stupidity, Bucky sighed, rolling his eyes. Wow, Bucky, didn't think you were that stupid, Thor replied with an innocent look. Ugh, Bucky muttered, at a loss for words. I laughed at the unexpected Dragon Ball abridged reference. That was an unexpected comeback from the God of Thunder, one I'm glad I happened to witness. Enough banter, children, we have things to do, the Ancient One chuckled. Indeed we have, I nodded, opening the door to the raid, eager to start. The Beyonder POV. The preparations were ready. The grand stage for the event that was about to unfold was ready. And, I couldn't be happier. The Tournament of Desire. I laughed, wondering if the desire of my creations would be stronger than the desire of Alex and his companions. Let the games begin, I grinned. Alex Walker POV. Today, like every day, I was doing a raid with my leveling team. It is, after all, like they say, there's no other way like the grind. Right now, our party was separated, putting each and every single one of us in a different part of the map. This was part of the mechanic of the raid because right now, we all had to deactivate a rune that powered the shield protecting the main boss. At the same time, each rune was hidden. Granted, we knew where the rune was, generally speaking, but we had to search, be attentive, so to speak. The rune I was looking for was located inside a small forest within the raid, which made my search a bit complicated, because sadly the rune was around the size of my hand, meaning it could be hidden anywhere around, behind a tree, behind a rock, heck maybe even inside a tree. A tree house. I whistled, finding a rather big tree house in the middle of the forest. I grinned at this, a single tree house in an old forest, it basically shouted, the rune was inside. Chuckling, I jumped to the house, avoiding the rickety ladder leading to the house. With a heave and a cloud of dust, I opened the door to the house and peeked inside. The last thing I needed was to pull more monsters than I could handle. However, much to my delight, the tree house seemed to be empty. So with a smile, I walked into the house, taking a good look around, surveying the dusty furniture and broken portraits that seemed to clutter the entire place. I wonder where the rune is, I muttered. Sighing, I started my search, moving every piece of furniture, looking for the rune, but as the minutes passed, I started to question if the rune was in the house at all. Heck, perhaps the house itself was a trap to waste time. Everyone, as to make this search quicker, I would like to point out, the runes we are looking for are within a shining gem. Once you get a glimpse of it, it's impossible to miss, the ancient one informed in the chat. I chuckled. It seemed she had been the first one to find the rune, not that it surprised me. An attic. I blinked, noticing the door leading to it, wondering who the fuck would build an attic inside a treehouse. Shaking my head, I took a deep breath, before opening the door leading to the attic with my telekinesis. Then with the door opened, I jumped inside the attic, taking in the musty smell of the room, immediately regretting my choice. Errors had been made. It smelled like someone that only eats Taco Bell had been farting there for decades, and the smell had basically integrated into the room as a permanent addition. Summoning a glade from my inventory, I continued my search, looking around nervously, because if it smelled like shit, there was usually shit to be found, and I didn't want to step on it. Then, as I walked deeper and deeper into the seemingly endless attic, something catches my attention. A faint glow from the back of the room, the glow itself palpitated like heart, following a rhythmical pattern. Grinning, I carefully make my way to the back of the room, glade at hand, where I found what I had been looking for. The rune. Heck yes! I chuckled, announcing in the chat I had found my rune, much to Thor's dismay, who was competing to find the rune first. I guess he would have to fight for third place now. I had secured the second. As I chuckled at that thought, an involuntary shiver runs down my spine as a mirror appears right in front of me. Lovely dimension, a voice I don't recognize echoes inside my skull, seemingly coming from everywhere around me. With no idea what was happening, I try to create a gap between me and the mirror but find myself held in place. Was this a boss? A secret one? I wondered, thinking how to escape him, hoping the mechanic didn't need a second person, because if it did, I was fucked. I hoped not literally. Suddenly, as I tried to make some sense of what was happening, the voice chuckled in amusement. No need to be afraid, I'm not one of your monsters, but I suppose in a way, I'm a monster, aren't I? It was here, when I came to the realization, this was not part of the raid. Who are you? I asked, sending a panic signal to my party. As I asked this question, a creature starts to form in the mirror. At first, the thing that was forming within the mirror looked alien, but as the seconds passed, that foreign look changed into that of a man wearing a white tux. The Beyonder LV. No. I was still not ready. Now, don't worry that little head of yours, the Beyonder chuckled, bending down ponderously. Sorry, but that won't happen, I'm worried the fuck up. What do you want? I asked. A lot of things, but right now. The Beyonder hummed, smiling at me. I want to see the limits of your desire. The limits of my what? Here's the deal, if you pass my test, I'll give you one wish. The Beyonder grinned. What do you say? A simple test, and you'll get a wish from me. Why was he even bothering me in the first place? Oh. I see it, he's like a kid burning the wings out of a roach, just for fun. What test? I had no other choice anyway, but to play the game, and hope to win. A tournament, your warriors, against mine, the winner takes it all. The Beyonder declared. I already knew what I wanted, for him to get the fuck out of my dimension, leaving me and my people alone, forever. Will you honor the wish? I asked. The Beyonder turned to look at me, an offended look on his face. Of course, what's the point of making a game, if I won't follow my own rules? Needless to say, some wishes are off the table, he finished, his tone turning unnaturally cold. So, if I were to ask you to never bother me, or my people again, would you do it? I asked. The Beyonder laughed, seemingly amused by my choice of wish. Only if you win, he replied. Bucky POV. One moment I was looking for a rune inside a cave, and the next thing I know a weird-looking man wearing a white tux appears, and says, "The game must begin." Then without another word, I find myself standing in the middle of what I could only assume was the North Pole. "What in the hell happened?" I muttered, looking around. This didn't feel right. Welcome players to the Beyonder Games. Now before we begin, you must know, you either win or die, there's no middle ground. With that out of the way, let's explain the situation a bit. This is a point tournament, each win gives your team a point. The highest score in total being 5. On Team A, we have Alex, Bucky, Yao, Thor, and Sif. On Team B, we have Morpheus, the Spartan, Solomon, Reinhard, and Dorothy. For those that didn't understand, Team A stands for Team Alex. And Team B stands for Team Beyonder. Now, each member will fight in a one-on-one match. ~Alex, I called in the voice chat. ~Bucky, Alex replied. What's happening? I cursed under my breath. And with that question spoken, Alex started explaining what was happening and that the one behind this was the one he had talked to me at that time. He also explained that if we won, there was a slim chance we would get rid of him. Now, on the first match we have, the Winter Soldier, vs the Spartan. I sighed. If that thing was so far beyond Alex, I had no other choice but to play, and hope the monster kept its word. The Spartan POV. I had been created for a single reason. To win for my creator. My desire was to please the one that had given me life, purpose, and meaning. My enemy. The Winter Soldier. Let the fight begin. It shall be done, your will, my blade father. Bang. The mortal had shot me, a valiant attempt. Futile nonetheless. Taking a deep breath, I kicked the ground beneath me, and rushed at my enemy, blade and shield at hand. Confident it would only take me one swing of my sword to end him. I was the ultimate soldier, the epitome of a warrior. I had been created for that. Super soldiers were beneath me. Die, I muttered, the distance between us, already gone, as I brought my blade down on him. But instead of a flash of blood, I heard my blade shatter, as the mortal in question blocked the attack with one of his arms. Don't bring steel to a vibranium fight, the mortal said with a small grin as I looked at him in mild shock. Then without wasting a moment, the mortal punched me in the stomach with the same arm that had shattered my blade. His punch was powerful and violent, and it sent me flying across the battlefield with a purple blast of light, that had seemingly originated from his fist. Coughing a bit of blood, I looked at the human in a new light. His attack was way more powerful than it had any right to be. Something was wrong. I began to speak, but once again the mortal started shooting. Interrupting me. You have no honor. Bucky POV. I had to play this safe, even the slightest mistake would lead to my death. That much I was clear. This Spartan was stronger than me. His first attack had proved that much, with the only reason I had not been cut in two being my metal arm. I had to avoid letting the fight play at his pace. If this evolved into a close-range match-up, I would lose. So I had to keep shooting until I thought of something. Enough. The Spartan roared, blasting towards me. I knew I couldn't dodge, so I had to make the best of it. So with that thought in mind, I positioned myself in a stable position to block his attack with my arm. The impact was violent, and even with my arm absorbing the kinetic force of the attack, it pained my body. My knees hurt, my back, and above all, my shoulder. Impressive, the Spartan blinked, once the dust of his attack had cleared. I smiled, pretending I was okay. Half of the battle was in the mind. Make your enemy think you are unfazed by him, and he will believe it. I know, I grinned, holding my body together by pure and absolute will. What little of the power my arm had not absorbed had hurt me, and bad. I got it. I can use his own power against him, but not like before. No, I needed more power, I needed my arm to absorb more. If one punch charged with his first attack had made him bleed internally a bit, I needed at least 10 times that to blow his head off. The only problem was, would my arm be able to stack up that kind of power, or would the limit of my arm and how much kinetic power could it hold before needing to be released be lower than what I needed? You are more than I expected, the Spartan admitted, but this ends now. I looked at him, and for a second, I analyzed his behavior, what I knew so far. His name, his devotion, his honor. He was like Steve. A naive fool. How about a contest then? Time to capitalize on his naivety. The Spartan who was about to attack looked at me, and said, "What? Each one will get some turns to attack." I started. So far, everything was going fine, he was taking the bait. We can't dodge the attacks, only block. You truly are a foolish creature, the Spartan replied. Are those the only rules? Foolish enough to trick you? No, I shook my head. We also must say where we are going to attack so that the other person gets the chance to block. After all, this is a battle of endurance. In the end, the most resilient one will win. The Spartan looked at me, giving me a long scrutinizing look before he nodded. Who goes first then? I smiled. You have 4 turns, then it's my turn. He had taken the bait. Now, everything depended of how durable my arm was. Very well, the Spartan nodded. I will punch you in the chest. Okay, I nodded, getting into a blocking position. Once again, the impact was powerful, and painful, this time forcing me to cough blood. That's turn 1, the Spartan spoke, as I looked into my arm. It had absorbed the impact, and it had yet to reach its limit. You still have 3 turns, I smiled. Go ahead. Very well, the Spartan nodded, honorable fool he was. And so, the Spartan began to attack me, burning his turns, each attack, taking a heavier and heavier toll on me, destroying my body from the inside. By the end of his turn, I was barely able to stand. Your turn, the Spartan spoke. I smiled, the moment of truth was near. My arm had not reached the limit of the power it could absorb, but it had absorbed 5 powerful attacks. Now it was all a matter of playing the Spartan. I will attack your right leg, I nodded, positioning myself to kick him. This, however, was a feint. Okay, the Spartan nodded, and as I telegraphed my kick, making sure he was paying attention to it, then I swung my arm at his throat, the most vulnerable part in anyone's body. Releasing all the kinetic energy he had given me with this little charade, in that singular point. The attack in question sent the Spartan and me flying across the field, the difference being, the Spartan was leaving a large trail of blood behind his wake. Landing on the snow with a loud playful thud, I sighed. I had done my best. If that hadn't killed him, I was done for. The Spartan POV. I had trusted him. I thought he was an honorable warrior. And he had tricked me. You failed, my creator sighed, as I drowned in my own blood. I wanted to beg for his forgiveness, but no sound came from my mouth, my throat was split open, my head barely hanging. If I moved, I knew it would roll down. The attack had pierced and severed a big part of my throat, almost destroying my spine. Coward! Damned coward! In anger, I cursed the Winter Soldier over and over again, as the cold nothingness of death embraced me. Hoping the rest of my companions would learn from my mistake, this beings had no honor in battle. The winner is the Winter Soldier. Alex Walker POV. There were a few things that really aggravated me, mentally speaking. One of them was watching my friends, my comrades, fighting to the death, and not being able to help them. Because like them, I was trapped in the game of a madman. It pained me. Watching Bucky battle someone who was 40 levels ahead of him and not being able to do anything about it was torture. Nonetheless, Bucky had won. Against all odds and logic, he had won. Defeating an enemy that by all means outclassed him. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the first round goes to Team A. The Beyonder announced, teleporting Bucky towards the stands that worked as our prison during this game. Growling at the Beyonder under my breath, I moved to treat Bucky's wounds with a few potions, while the Ancient One stared at the all-powerful brat floating a few meters away from us. "We can't lose," the Ancient One muttered. I know, I nodded, forcing the potions down Bucky's throat. The situation was dire, heck, even Thor knew this, his entire posture and body language screamed he knew what was happening. We had to win, there was no other choice for us, we had for the moment to comply with the whims of a child, playing with us like his personal toys. Now, let's get ready for the second match. The Beyonder announced, smiling from cheek to cheek, Lady Sif, vs. Dorothy. With that said, the Beyonder snapped his fingers, and the once winter-themed battleground changed to an arena full of people. It almost looked like the Asgard arena. Sif, it was Sif's turn. Once again, I would be forced to watch someone I cared about fight against all odds. Alex, Sif said, snapping me out of my train of thought. I will win, don't worry. I blinked. Had I really been projecting my feelings so much she had read me like an open book? I can't help but worry, I chuckled without emotion. I know, Sif nodding, as the Beyonder teleported her to the newly formed arena. Good luck, I muttered. Sif POV. Before today, the idea of someone standing above the All-Father in power was a thought that shouted impossibility. For he, in the eyes of every Asgardian, was absolute power. Yet, today, that idea shattered like a mirror. The Beyonder. His mere presence screamed at me to run. I wanted to. But I couldn't. Running would leave Alex alone. He wouldn't run. So that meant, I couldn't run. I was afraid. But I was not gonna let my fear control me. All-Father, bless me with your might, I sighed, unsheathing my blade. Waiting for my opponent to appear. Dorothy, don't keep the audience waiting. The Beyonder, the monster that had trapped us, chuckled, as a girl, no older than Emily, appeared in the battleground, holding a black teddy bear in her hands. Sorry. Dorothy giggled, skipping towards me very slowly. I was taking a nap. The girl added. I blinked. I was to battle a child. What kind of sick game this monster was playing. Now, let the battle begin. The Beyonder declared, disappearing out of sight. I hope my appearance doesn't fool you, Dorothy, the girl I was supposed to fight giggled, holding her teddy bear tight. Believe it or not, I'm stronger than I look. In fact, Spartan was the weakest of our group. No wonder he died, she pouted. She was right. This was not the time to hesitate. I thank you for those words, I nodded, rushing at her. Momo, tear her apart, Dorothy smiled, tossing her black teddy bear into the sky. What? I muttered, seeing how the once stuffed animal morphed into a monster, a demon covered in black flames from head to toe, flames that didn't seem to burn him at all. Then, without a second thought, the now 10-foot-tall beast roared, with enough power to push me back. I cursed. I had hoped not to be outmatched like Bucky had been. But if the roar was anything to go by, Dorothy and her beast were stronger than me. Bring it on! I roared back, challenging the beast. After all, I was not permitted to lose. I had promised a victory, and a victory I would deliver. Dorothy POV. I smiled in anticipation. Soon, Momo would tear the little goddess apart, limb by limb, leaving nothing but a gory picture of madness. What a delight! I couldn't help but giggle at the thought. Nonetheless, Momo was having a relatively hard time against her. Admirable, I supposed. She was clearly out of her range. And yet, she was keeping her ground. Though, if anything, she was simply delaying the inevitable. Oh well. The more they struggle, the sweeter it is to hear them scream in sheer agony. Momo, be a dear, and hurry up, I sighed in annoyance while looking at the time. We have a tea party in 10 minutes. Momo in reply roared, his body growing even more as he entered his sweet berserker mode. Her end was near, and just in time for my tea party. How fun! Sif POV. No matter what I did, the beast was unfazed by my attacks. It pained to admit it, but it was clear the girl and his toy were toying with me, playing with their food. I tried everything, getting closer to the girl, attacking the beast from every angle, but nothing fazed the creature. I was out of my range. That much became more than evident when the girl annoyingly asked her toy to wrap things up. This in turn made the bear stronger, faster, and subsequently beyond my capabilities to defend. I managed to dodge the first attack. Soon after, the beast entered his berserker mode. The second attack, I didn't even see it coming. In fact, I realized what had happened a few moments after, when a new pain shot up on my right side. I had lost an arm. Sif! Alex screamed, trying to break out of the prison the Beyonder had him. Sorry Alex, rules are rules, the Beyonder chuckled, mocking Alex. You bastard! Thor screamed, trying with Alex to break through the barrier that kept them in place. It was a futile attempt. I knew that. They knew that. Well, it's time to end this little party, don't you think? Dorothy smiled. I looked at the girl, his beast, and then at Alex. No. I was not going to give up. I am the goddess of war, child, and war only ends when one party surrenders. And I will never surrender. I shouted, breaking my shirt off with my remaining hand to tie it around my arm, to avoid bleeding out. Some people really don't know their place, Dorothy sighed in disappointment. Dorothy POV. I was being merciful. I even offer her a quick way to end it all. But no good deed ever goes unpunished. Momo, kill her, and be quick, I grow tired of this charade, I sighed, ordering my faithful companion to end this little playdate. Momo nodded, roaring in delight, as he pushed his advance towards the one-armed idiot. Then, as my Momo was about to attack her once again, she did something I was not expecting. She dodged. How? I mused. A few seconds ago Momo's attacks had been too fast for her to even register. Now, she was reacting, avoiding what should be her imminent death. The Ancient One POV. Sif had started the fight being totally and absolutely overwhelmed. The demon she was fighting was one that eclipsed her in every way: power, speed, and magic. In every aspect, Dorothy and her beast stood above her. And yet, Sif refused to give up. That continued for a while, to the point, the battle had claimed one of her arms. A point where many would have thrown the towel. And yet, she refused to give up. And now, the gap that was at one point painfully clear between her and Dorothy, was disappearing. Because out of sheer desperation and will, Sif was evolving. Become a true goddess. She was tapping into her godly domain, for the first time ever. Slowly, but surely becoming stronger. Goddamighty! Alex roared. She will win, I assured him. He didn't reply. I didn't blame him. Dorothy POV. This made no sense. A few moments ago, she was but a rat cornered. Now, I couldn't even touch her. And what was worse, her attacks were affecting Momo. Momo! I told you to kill her. I screamed. Momo roared, but it changed nothing. Now we are even, Beast Sif growled, and for a moment, I wondered what she meant. It was then that I realized, she had cut one of Momo's arms. You think you will win? I spat, you will only achieve agony here. I was not gonna let this pathetic woman defeat me, I was Dorothy. The demon princess. I will win, even if it costs me my life, child. Sif shouted back, blasting towards me at great speed. I cursed. You will win nothing. I spat, summoning all of my toys. If she thought Momo was my only toy, she was mistaken. Sif POV. I don't know how, or why. But I was suddenly stronger. The injury that should have crippled me, seemed to be a minor inconvenience. I felt liberated. Every move, every step, every swing of my sword, felt light and fast. I felt mighty. And with this new feeling, a possibility I thought impossible opened. Victory had become achievable. Dorothy knew this. I knew it. She was panicking. Summoning dozens of her toys. In an attempt to crush me. And yet, the numbers barely changed a thing. Die, die, die. Die already. Dorothy screamed, stomping her feet to the ground in a fit. Behind all that bravado and bloodlust, she was but a child, created by a monster to fight for his sick entertainment. I pitied her. I'm sorry, I muttered, moving towards her. I truly am. Dorothy POV. I'm sorry, she muttered, moving towards me. I truly am. She pitied me. Me. I was Dorothy. The demon princess. How dare she? You don't get to pity me. I cried, ordering all my toys to attack her. She had no right, she had no right. Blame your creator, Sif muttered, swiftly slashing through all of my toys with ease. This was no fair. She was cheating. Cheater, cheater, pants on fire. I screamed, as my last remaining toys gathered around me to protect me, Momo being amongst them. How was this fair? She was cheating. She was getting stronger by the second. No fair. Well, this settles it. My father spoke. What? I muttered, turning to look at my creator, my father standing above me, disappointed. You lost, he replied. No, I haven't lost. The battle has not ended. Sif declared. Please, Asgardian father rolled his eyes. The moment you awakened your Asgardian powers, Dorothy became useless. Useless? No, I was still useful. Daddy, please, let me try again. I can win, I know I can. I begged, crying at him. Daddy. He turned to look at me in disgust. You mean nothing to me, begone. What? Sif POV. Without a second thought, he had killed Dorothy. One moment she was there, the next, she was gone. He simply willed her existence to end. The winner of the second round is Sif," he proclaimed with a smile. "You monster," I hissed. "Rude." He rolled his eyes, snapping his fingers, teleporting me back to my team, apparently regenerating my arm in the process. "A gift, for having to deal with that poor excuse of a warrior. That's on me. I failed to make her competent," he smiled, pointing at my arm. That's it for the video, guys. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe. Also tell me in the comment section which kind of fanfiction you would like to watch next, or if you have any recommendation.